For the second time in under 2 months, the 21st Battalion Kenya Rifles of the Kenya Army is being accorded the honor of leading the parade for the Commander-in-Chief. The unit flag or color displayed gracefully by Lieutenant Amon Lepatong, who held it tightly, guarding it jealously as the troops awaited a special moment when the Commander-in-Chief would bow before it. Before long, the CDF General Robert Kibochi walked to receive the Commander-in-Chief, the two riding in the open-top Land Rover to a rousing applause from those inside the event's grounds. The red tunic of the Kenya Army taking center stage as the Chief of Defense Forces and the ADC Lieutenant Colonel Lengu Suranga, both army officers standing by their Commander-in-Chief. Once the national anthem was done and that of the EAC, President Ruto inspected the Guard of Honor, constituting of 160 men from the three services, the red tunic of the Kenya Army taking the largest chunk of the parade due to its position within the KDF, the deep blue of the Kenya Air Force following through, and the whites of the Navy also standing out. Once the parade had left the grounds, a feature that was last seen at such an event before the era of COVID-19 came back. Officers from the military, the police, the KWS, Kenya Forest Service, prisons, the Coast Guard, NYS and the Nairobi City County marched past the president to showcase the country's security service capabilities. Even the four-legged officers were not left behind. The Starehe Band, mimicking the military band by playing music for the scouts, the Girl Guides and emergency response teams, marched past that constituted school children from schools across the country.
Na kukaribisha nyote katika jimbo la Nairobi kwa sherehe yako ya kwanza kama rais baada ya kuapishwa ya Mashujaa Day.
That I preside over this year's celebration for the first time as president, and I am humble and grateful.
The country's 5th Commander-in-Chief will be honored again on the 12th of December this year, when the military will do again their trooping of the color, which will be his second such public event to preside over. Leila Mohammed, NTV, at the Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi.
Now, staying with matters security, given that was the military, President William Ruto has called for urgent investigations into alleged misconduct by the now disbanded Special Service Unit. Ruto disbanded the unit over claims that some officers were responsible for extrajudicial killings in the country. And as Nginaki Rori reports, President William Ruto says countering violent extremism in the Horn of Africa is among his objectives when it comes to matters security within the Horn of Africa.
To say that the first months of President William Ruto's first term has shaken up the security sector would be putting it mildly. The disbandment of the Special Service Unit, formerly known as the Flying Squad, on 16th October set the wheels in motion for a plan Ruto says is in place to squash disastrous actions such as extrajudicial killings, which had become part of policing in the country.
I have directed that immediate measures be undertaken to disband the Special Services Unit in the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, and with urgency, investigations must be commenced so that those found culpable are held to account.
President Ruto adding that his government will scale up resources within the judiciary to relieve them of the backlog of cases.
On my first day in office, I executed the instruments to actualize the financial autonomy of the National Police Service and have given the necessary directives to enable it rapidly achieve national security strategic objectives.
In his maiden speech, Ruto also referred to the conflict engulfing the Ethiopia-Tigray region, saying his government is keeping an eye on the security issues in the Horn of Africa.
The conflict in Tigray region of Ethiopia, which according to reports from the Office of the United Nations Secretary General is escalating, is a great source of concern to our region. Kenya will continue to play its role by making such contributions as is required by the Africa Union-sponsored mediation efforts. The sooner hostilities cease and a face-to-face talks commence, the better for our region.
The disbandment of the Special Service Unit under the Directorate of Criminal Investigations was occasioned by the abduction of 2 Indian nationals in April this year. The families, through lawyer Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, obtained orders compelling agencies to produce them in court, but this did not take place. It is reported that the 2 had flown into the country to join Ruto's team. DCI boss Amin Ibrahim had on 15th October presented an investigation report on the Special Service Unit, which is said to pave way for the conclusion of investigations. Gena Kirari, NTV.
Meanwhile, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has urged political leaders to end their differences and focus on rebuilding the nation. Gachagua urged all Kenyans to unite in the spirit of the country's freedom fighters for prosperity.
Irrespective of our political differences, it is time to work and deliver. We are all Kenyans, this is our nation, and we are rising together. This is the freedom our forefathers fought for. This is the freedom Kenyans voted for. No more room for pain and suffering. Indeed, Mr. President, the real freedom is here with us today. Mr. President, this day reminds us all of history, our struggle and the blood shed by Kenyans. It shows us the beauty of purpose, the beauty of unity and purposeful living.
Wiper leader Kalonzo-Ruto is the only leader from the opposition coalition, Azimio la Umoja, who attended the Mashujaa Day celebrations at the Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi. All other top Azimio leaders, including minority leadership in parliament, kept off.
The strained relationship between top Azimio la Umoja One Kenya party leaders and President William Ruto came to the fore at the Mashujaa Day national celebrations. Opposition leader and President Ruto's main political rival in the concluded 2022 presidential election, Raila Odinga, together with his running mate Martha Karua, kept off the event. The 2 leaders are currently out of the country. The minority leadership that represents the coalition in parliament was also absent. These includes minority leader in the National Assembly Opiyo Wandayi and Senate's Stewart Mazayo. Wiper leader Kalonzo-Ruto was the only top opposition leader present in the event. Kalonzo attended the event few days after publicly criticizing President Ruto for lifting the ban on GMO food, and even after vowing that Azimio legislators will reject Ruto's cabinet secretary nominees with questionable integrity. Kalonzo's presence has raised eyebrows about his current view towards Ruto's presidency. Since during the tail end of the 2022 presidential campaigns, President Ruto had a soft spot for Kalonzo and kept on calling on him to quit Azimio and join Kenya Kwanza. However, Kalonzo rejected Ruto's charm offensive. The absence of Odinga and Karua has cemented not only their claims that their presidential victory was stolen, but also their belief in rejecting Ruto's presidency. Vincent Odur, NTV.
Now, as Kenya marked her 59th Mashujaa Day celebrations since self-rule yesterday, the name of Miriam Muthoni Mathenge features. I do recall that she was on the Daily Nation as well. Several decades down the line, Muthoni Mathenge, wife of freedom fighter General Stanley Mathenge, still remembers how she lost her 1-month-old daughter, Wambui Mathenge, and was detained for 7 years for fighting for independence. Our reporter, Margaret Kimathi, tells us a story of a war heroine that is filled with love, pain, and perseverance.
Miriam Muthoni Mathenge had a slightly over a month-old baby Wambui Mathenge when about 20 policemen who were under instructions of the colonial government stormed her house at Getuge in Othaya, Nyeri County. Muthoni shares her painful experience in the hands of the said officer who thoroughly beaten her up looking for her husband General Stanley Mathenge wa Mirugi, who was a Mau Mau freedom fighter. Following the incident, Muthoni, in the company of a friend, hurriedly carried her baby and dashed into the thick forest as they fled atrocities from the colonial government.
Wambui nilikuwa nimekoma kunyonyesha ili nipate nguvu za kutosha za kutorokea msituni. Nikakumbuka nilimbeba mgongoni tulipokuwa tukipitia msitu mnene wa Aberdare.
As the struggle for independence continued, she was arrested and detained at Kamiti Maximum Prison. The government declared a state of emergency and several freedom fighters, including Jomo Kenyatta, were detained.
Hiyo vita ilikuwa mbaya sana na Wambui aliachwa katika hospitali moja Nyeri ambako alitunzwa pamoja na watoto wengine ambao wazazi wao walikuwa kizuizini. Wakati huo nilihamishwa kutoka Nyeri hadi Kamiti.
Muthoni never saw her daughter again. It's been 6 decades since then.
Niletewe Wambui. Nataka kumwambia nampenda na arudi nyumbani. Huwa nasikia ati ako na mtoto wa kike.
Though aged about 103 years, Muthoni still hangs on to the hope to see her daughter again as she recalls how she went into exile in the neighboring Murang'a County after the death of Chief Nderi Wang'ombe. That is also when policemen stormed his house and brutally injured her on her right leg.
Mapambano yalikuwa magumu na yamejaa mateso na nilikuwa na mtoto mgongoni. Niliwekwa kizuizini mara 3 kwa jumla. Nilikaa kizuizini kwa miaka 7. Watu wengine walikufa katika seli.
Muthoni is filled with optimism that she will one day reunite with his husband, General Mathenge, who is believed to be among people who kick-started Mau Mau rebellion together with Dedan Kimathi. Mathenge is presumed to have died in Ethiopia after joining the war in the 1950s. Her emotions change when the subject on the whereabouts of General Mathenge is introduced.
Ikiwa mtafunga ndoa na kuishi pamoja miezi kadhaa kisha mkatengana, utafurahia kumpoteza mtu huyo kweli? Tangu nimpoteze mpenzi wangu Mathenge, sijawahi kuwa na amani. Bado nimejawa na mawazo kumhusu kwa sababu mume anachukuliwa kama nguzo ya nyumbani.
As Kenya celebrates 59 years of independence, Muthoni, who is partially blind, has little to smile about as she recounts the unfulfilled promises made by the past administrations to those who fought for the country's liberation.
Ninataka kukutana na Rais William Ruto na kumweleza masaibu ambayo nimekuwa nikipitia. Nimekuwa nikimuombea. Ninaamini atanijengea nyumba nzuri na kuhakikisha kuwa ninafurahia maji ya mfereji.
Muthoni Mathenge says that the honor of being called a freedom fighter does not bring joy to her soul. As she feels the government has not done much for them, she now calls upon the government to take care of his family and help his grandchildren secure jobs. Margaret Kimathi, NTV, Nyeri County.
Lawyer and activist Miguna Miguna finally set foot on his motherland, that is, on the soil of his motherland, after close to 5 years in exile. His return was greeted with murmurs over which political course his return will take. Some pundits opine that his return could pose a challenge to Raila Odinga's kingpin status in Nyanza. I'm curious to hear what my panelist who's in studio this morning has to say about that. And NTV's Sydney Chazima interrogated political analysts on Miguna's return and how that will shift, possibly, the political landscape in Nyanza.
Viva Miguna, viva! Viva!
At exactly 0600 hours, as he had promised, Miguna made his way to a jubilant welcome from his supporters.
My friend, thank you very much.
And from the look on his radiant face,
it was a sigh of relief for the self-proclaimed General Miguna after 1,716 days away from Kenya when he was deported back in 2018.
And his first pronouncement?
I must extend my gratitude to Kenyans that voted overwhelmingly for the Kenya Kwanza government, because that is central for me. Without this administration, I would not be back home.
It has not been lost on the public how swift the Ruto administration has been in regards to facilitating the removal of the red alerts to allow for Miguna's return. And from that swiftness arises a debate on just what role Ruto intends to have Miguna play in the political spheres of Nyanza. But when quizzed if he would accept a job offer in the Kenya Kwanza government, Miguna retorted,
"That is an irrelevant question at this time. I have given my statement. It ends there."
On his social media handles, Miguna has many a time proclaimed his desire to chart a different political path for the Nyanza region, away from Raila Odinga's decades-old stranglehold. But political experts believe Miguna still has a long way to go to attain a kingpin status.
No, please, let's not even bring Miguna close to Baba and his agenda. Miguna has his place in the social media, in the place of verbal attack, in the place of the, we might call it disrespect or whatever it is. He shoots without thinking. That's Miguna. Does his coming really board on a threat for Raila? I don't think you can relate it that way.
But Miguna remains bullish in his resolve to launch Nyanza's new political order.
Breathing fresh oxygen. Miguna is going to take it in, right? And then, you know me, you will see what you see. Yes.
In a number of his posts on social media, the terms despot and conman, referring to Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga respectively, have been a mainstay. These remarks earned him praise and condemnation equally. But according to analysts, these tirades do not earn him the needed political capital to topple Raila in Nyanza.
At the end of the day, Miguna will have to learn that he has to have an agenda for Kenyans to work with him. But that agenda cannot be despot Uhuru, conman Raila. That is not an agenda. You should be saying issues, you should be on issues, you should be able to dissect those issues, you should be able to allow Kenyans to understand you for who you are.
In his recent travels in Nyanza, President Ruto was in the company of local leaders who have decamped from Odinga's fold, and the return of Miguna now adds to the number of his Luo Nyanza ammunition of leaders who don't walk the Raila talk.
Since President Ruto was sworn in, it has taken honesty. He said that he would facilitate my return, and he did. And we have to commend him for that. He's a man of his word.
Miguna has promised to announce his next political moves in the coming days, and should he make good of his resolve to chart a new political path away from Raila, the spotlight will shift to what measures Raila will put in place to ward off any challenges to his kingpin status in the Nyanza region. Sydney Chazima, NTV.
All right, on the news diary today, and also that partly informs our conversation this morning on first impressions on Ruto's cabinet, and the vetting of Ruto's cabinet secretaries resumes. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to flag of fertilizer at NFT Syokimau. The Kenya International Industrial Expo 2022. There's a media briefing on that, and the launch of the Millennials Badiliko digital platform. So those are just some of the stories we are following up for you today. Let's take a look at the newspapers. But as I get it ready, we have Kidi Mwaga already in studio. Kidi, you're mic'd up?
I guess I am.
All right, there's the report we carried of Miguna Miguna's return to the country. He tweeted that he would be working towards the transformation and development of Luo Nyanza. Yes. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I find it as a statement made in a rush, because when Miguna views himself, say, as the savior of Nyanza in isolation, or say to the exclusion of the rest part of the country, then I think that in itself sends very wrong indicators, because it means that Miguna does not view himself as a national leader, but then as, say, as a potential kingpin, say, of the Luo Nyanza region. We are all aware that Prime Minister Raila Odinga has had a hold in the Nyanza region, in the Nyanza politics for some time now. We also know that age appears to be catching up with with the Right Honorable, the Prime Minister. But then whoever is seeking to succeed Prime Minister Raila Odinga must do so in a manner that demonstrates that they are in touch with the needs of the people, say, of that region and Kenya as a whole. Today, you look at the first, the pronouncements by the president, and you would agree with me that the president appears to be in touch with the needs of the people. The president speaks of the triple planetary crisis, of climate change, pollution, loss of biodiversity, the need to invest more in agriculture and production. I think, in my view, those are and respect to the rule of law, those are the things that if Miguna were to want to succeed, either Raila Odinga in Luo Nyanza, and strategically place himself as a potential leader in this country, those are the issues, in my view, that Miguna should be speaking to. But when he's saying that he's going to rescue Luo Nyanza, he's going to raise, the question is, he's going to rescue Luo Nyanza from what? Because we have a devolution that seems to be working for every part of this country. So that today we do not have to say, be a choir master in a government to get development. Out of the 300+ billion that the national government sends to the counties, counties in Luo Nyanza would be able to chart their own path. President William Ruto strikes me as someone who understands very well the net effect of politics of exclusion. And I do not think that he would want to be keen to perpetuate politics of ethnic exclusion. If anything, in Kenya Kwanza, we have very high-ranking members from the Luo community. For instance, we have Eliud Owalo, who is already a cabinet secretary. So if Miguna is coming to say that he's coming to rescue Luo Nyanza, I would want to classify it into his usual brashness that he has demonstrated over time. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're saying it is unlikely that William Ruto is sponsoring Miguna's ambitions for Luo Nyanza.
Well, if the president were, then it is a move I would advise against. And the question is, why would I advise against the president, say, sponsoring Miguna? Number one, Miguna has demonstrated that he is a difficult man to rely on. Why do I say difficult to rely on? We have seen men who have held a position akin to that held by Miguna as advisor, as someone who is very close, and someone like James Baker comes to mind. And other people who have been, privy to being up close to people in power. And we've seen how they've conducted themselves with so much decorum. And when I say decorum is that when you disagree with someone, then there are things about them that you would want to, not talk about so generously, because when you do, it also undermines your capacity, puts into question your capacity to be trusted. We saw that up to 2017, Miguna supposedly voted for President Uhuru Kenyatta. In the intervening period, when it emerged that the Supreme Court did not agree with the IBC on how the elections were conducted, he quickly changed the tune and ran back to bed with Raila Odinga, a man he had dismissed from 2013 to 2017 and said that would amount to nothing. So that for him changing the tune at that point in time, scrambling to Uhuru Park to swear Raila Odinga then, and then again now, I mean, it portrays a man whom you are unable to rely on. I hope the president does not elevate him over people who have stood with him from Luo Nyanza, like say Eliud Owalo, among other people who may not be in the limelight, but I don't think Miguna should be the president man from the region.
All right.
Yes.
Now, before we get into the dailies, I'd like us to look at some of the promises that President William Ruto made at the Mashujaa Day celebrations. We start with this. These are his promises as regards the digital superhighway. 1, facilitate nationwide universal broadband connectivity over the next 5 years. Digitize at least 80% of all critical government services, bring down the cost of calls data to bring more youth online for business, and establish more arts and culture infrastructure. So I'm keen to see this take shape, especially bringing down the cost of calls and data to bring more youth online for business. Also, this 80% of all critical government services being digitized. He says facilitate nationwide universal broadband connectivity, and perhaps an IT expert can explain to those laymen such as myself what broadband means. All right, President William Ruto's pledges on Mashujaa Day as regards universal healthcare, mainstream community health workers, making them the foundation of the healthcare system, change the NHIF from an individual contributory scheme to a household contribution model, which I believe was what the pilot was all about. So that is universal healthcare. Now let's take a look at his pledges as regards access to credit. No blacklisting of borrowers as Kenya moves to a credit scoring system. No citizen will be excluded from the credit system. They will be eligible to access credit as they work their way out in paying their loans. All right, and avail credit products to small businesses on digital platforms at affordable rates. Government to match borrowers' savings on the Hustlers Fund on a 2-to-1 ratio to a level determined by the program, and launch Hustler Fund credit and savings product on the 1st of December 2022, as Melita Oletenges kicked us off this morning with that report. And let's take a look at what other pledges he made. And this is as regards housing. Increased supply of houses fourfold from 50,000 to 200,000 per year. Jokali industry to make inputs such as doors, windows, gates and hinges. Mortgages for as low as 5,000 shillings a month for government-provided climate-smart houses. Build at least 5,000 houses in every county in collaboration with the county governments, and build as many as 50,000 houses in counties with larger metropolitan areas. And finally, as far as these pledges are concerned, I'm not sure how clear that is, but we'll make do. Construct at least, this is as regards the food basket agriculture, construct at least 100 dams through public-private partnerships, irrigate 3 million acres of land already identified as irrigable, double land and irrigation to 1.4 million acres in 3 years, reinstate stalled milk coolers program, distribution of 650 milk coolers to resume shortly, avail 6 million bags of fertilizer for the long rain season, eradicate hunger in the country in the shortest time possible, support farmers to access quality inputs, that being seeds, fertilizer and pesticides, ensure extension services are availed to farmers to improve farming skills, a fertilizer import program, continue it in the medium term, manufacture fertilizer in partnership with EAC countries in the long term, and work with local research institutions to scale up seed multiplication for all crops. Okay, now we can get into the Daily Nation. And big story here at the top, too hot to handle. After 45 days, Liz Truss throws in the towel as UK Prime Minister. But back home, and I will engage my panelists on that, it appears, what's Kitty, remind me, the Prime Minister's residence, it's... the 10 Downing Street. Yes, it appears to be a revolving door, 45 days. But of course, that has to do with the tax policy that received a lot of resistance. So analysts say that is what led to her resignation. But we'll look into that deeper in a moment. Ruto turns up heat on DCI crack squad and rogue police. President Ruto wants investigations into the activities of the disbanded Special Service Unit that has been accused of carrying out extrajudicial killings expedited and action taken against those found culpable. This comes even as 21 detectives who served in the disgraced DCI crack unit were suspended, disarmed and summoned for questioning. And new rules for Hustler Fund. We've gone through those pledges made, other promises, the 200,000 houses per year, putting up a fertilizer manufacturing plant in partnership with East African community countries, providing 6 million fertilizer bags to farmers for the long rain season, reinstating the stalls milk coolers program, Hustler Fund to be launched on December the 1st, plant 5 billion trees by 2027, and another let me confirm that figure. And cannot find my hard copy of the Daily Nation. But perhaps you could tell me, Kiddy, do you have your Daily Nation there? I do. All right. Under other promises. Sorry, it is yet to be delivered. Okay, yes. Let me just zoom in. Make it easier for all of us. Make life easier for all of us. Yes, plant another 10 billion by 2032, recruit 2,700 forest rangers and 600 forest officers, reform the NHIF, that is the National Health Insurance Fund. So there we have it, the front page of the Daily Nation. Gentlemen, I'm curious, before I bring you back home and we look at these promises and also the vetting of cabinet secretaries, what do you make of this story here? Too hot to handle after 45 days. Liz Truss throws in the towel as UK Prime Minister. Karibu sana, Maina Karobia.
Thank you, Olive.
Feeling good this morning?
Yes.
Bado naema.
Bado. You know, just from holiday in Mombasa.
I can see the sandals.
Yes. So,
welcome back to Nairobi.
Thank you.
It is a Friday, you're allowed.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for hosting me, particularly post winning the election. But back to the question that you have asked me, in regards to the 45 reign of the former Prime Minister, 45 days of former Prime Minister of Britain. I think the war in Ukraine is going to claim so many economic and political lives, and truth happens to be one of them from the political angle. But let me say this, that the political economy of Britain happens to be in disarray, and I think it is because they are yet to really move from the traditional way of economics, and still there is also the issue of how they are conducting their foreign policy, particularly with some nations such as Russia. I remember there was stringent sanctions that were carried on Russia and their nationals, particularly the businessmen who had invested in London. So I think these are some of the issues that are bringing the disarray that we are finding in Ukraine. Not Ukraine, but rather British politics. And I think it is better that they move from the way of, they are conducting their politics in a way that really doesn't, is not futuristic. They need to move their politics from the 20th and 19th century kind of doing things, because I still believe that some countries such as Britain, they had to move from the way they were, from the colonialism way of economics. I think they need to modernize, they need to evolve, so that they can have at least some political stability. Otherwise, I think the British nationals or British citizens, they might ask for a more projected monarchy than we find now, because the parliamentary system is not serving them right.
All right, it's been a tumultuous couple of years, starting from Brexit, and then we had COVID, and then, yeah, it's been the Russia-Ukraine war, as Maina Karubia has referenced. Kidi, anything to say about this?
You have captured it very well, that the genesis of the problem we are seeing in Britain was a Brexit. And pundits are still out there, the jury is still out there wondering whether Prime Minister Cameron should have allowed Brexit. But then I think that, yes, he should have, so that the British people ultimately decide whether they wanted to remain in the European Union or get out of the European Union and chart their own path. One thing that we are all learning from the circus in the UK today is that indeed choices have consequences. And when foreign masters showed up in 2013 and told us that choices have consequences, I think that is an appeal of their own that they should now take. Because you see, it is when Brexit came in, then we had a new sheriff in town. Then that new sheriff in town was so that it has consistently consumed people who have attempted to stay at 10 Downing Street. I was seeing a joke, a meme on Twitter yesterday, that Airbnb is now...
I was thinking of the same thing. I'll pull it up just now.
That 10 Downing Street is now the perfect place for short stays. So that you see prime ministers coming in and quickly going out because of the challenges set in motion by Brexit, the disruption that came with the COVID-19, the heightened disruption that the war in Ukraine has made worse now, so that there is a general strained economic situation in the UK and of course across the world, because they've got a much more informed citizenry and again a disorganized Tory party. You see their prime ministers coming and leaving, and there was a joke that the lettuce has outlived Prime Minister Liz Truss. Thank you.
All right, I'm just trying to download. Here we have it. The meme you were talking about, pulled it off my WhatsApp.
Yes, that
sponsored by Airbnb. Perfect for short stays. 10 Downing Street. There we take a break. When we come back, we bring matters closer home and look at the pledges President William Ruto made in his inaugural Mashujaa Day speech, first public holiday for him. And I want to hear what my panelists made of those pledges.
So these chicks go to Uganda, they become mature, they lay eggs, and then we refuse the eggs.
Kenyan chicks have to go to Uganda to become mature and productive.
Kwa tajiri nakuta ni kiti moja, TV, carpet, na mahali glass, mahali meza tu. Na ako sawa.
Ako sawa.
Wewe uko na mavitu hivi, mawaya zimepita hivi kwa nyumba.
Shaona mtu anahama, umeita mtu wa mkoko. Lakini akikuja kwa nyumba yako anaanza kukuadvise. Ati bro, hata mimi nilianzia hapo.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Take advantage of the Finance Act 2022 moratorium on penalties and interests. Surrender any unclaimed financial assets in your possession today. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
So bitiki drop bidi na siku propa na kauna skia hii weni wako prosper. So weka tick, confirm na mimi weka tick, kauna pumua weka tick, amekuamsha weka tick.
Hey, I go by the name Jabidi aka Shoot Satan. Na manze kupata hii song weka tick asiyasikiza tune ni very simple. Una dial *811 *851 # na utakuwa manze umepata hiyo song. Sikiza na Nation, supporting local talent.
Breast cancer kills more than 500,000 people across the globe.
I had a lump, a very tiny lump, like a pimple, but it was not painful. During the monthly cycle, the lump would grow, but not very fast, slowly. And then it was very itchy.
Oftentimes a lump is described as something that you can definitely feel on its own, like it's not blending into the rest of the tissue. And again, it can be very difficult for a lay person to sort of call it a lump or a lumpiness.
I took myself in the hospital. I was not with any pains, just a a fall that triggered the blood from the nipple. And here is a doctor telling me that I have cancer.
Learn in a minute, brought to you by Nivea Lumina 630 Anti-Dark Mark Serum.
Last week, we looked at dark marks caused by hormonal imbalance. Today, let's look at dark marks caused by the most common factor, sun exposure. Hello, my name is Emma, and this is Learn in a Minute. Have you ever worn your favorite top? Then in the evening, when you get home and change, you find the whole outline of your top drawn on your skin? This is an example of hyperpigmentation caused by the sun exposure. Now imagine our face that is exposed to the sun every day. Panic not. Solution Eco. You need a serum that regulates this hyperpigmentation and a day cream with SPF 50 that will block this sun rays. I'm thinking Nivea Luminous 630. It starts working from day one with visible results in just 2 weeks. My name is Emma, and this is Learn in a Minute.
Learn in a Minute, brought to you by Nivea Lumina 630 Anti-Dark Mark Serum.
Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Welcome back to AM Live. This morning we get the youth perspective, and I'd like us to get in the topic of into the topic of Ruto's cabinet and what your first impressions are. But I did promise to give my panelists occasion to comment on the pledges made by President William Ruto in his first Mashujaa Day speech, heavily focused on agriculture and securing Kenya's food basket. He delved into climate change, made pledges as far as fertilizer is concerned. Not only that, he got onto the digital superhighway as a way of generating employment. He also addressed several other issues, including matters security. And I'll start with that. Ruto orders probe into the disbanded police crack squad. President says it is possible to secure the country without terrorizing or killing its citizens. If I flip over to the next page of the Daily Nation, members of dissolved DCI unit revealed summoned. You can find those details on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel. Gina Kirori filed a report on that last night. Gentlemen, young people are often the ones who are on the wrong side of police guns. Many times, more often than not. So what do you make of this? Kitty.
I thought the president's man on the panel would want to go first, but then, thank you. We form governments for the simple reason that they should protect and uphold the right of individuals. But many a times we've seen governments go rogue when they have turned the instruments of violence bestowed on them by the citizenry to either silence, maim, or kill those very same citizens. It is something that has been witnessed in this country, where people who, from the days of detention without trial, and we have seen the excessive the use of the police to settle either political scores or sometimes to silence critics, and generally an instance where we operate in an aura of limited accountability. And there is nothing that personifies that better than a police force that, instead of upholding law and order, then becomes the perpetrator of that lawlessness. If someone, for whatever reason, is suspected by the state for engaging in things that are less than legal, the ideal scenario is that they should be presented in court. But when the police choose to become the judge, the jury, and the executioner, the prosecutor and the executioner, it sets in a very dangerous precedent. We have been told that this unit that is being disbanded now by the president was used a number of times, not to uphold the rule of law, but to make sure that people who maybe were suspected of whatever reason or whatever things would then be made to disappear. And we saw bodies being discovered in places like River Mathioya and River Yala. The question is, why should we have let that happen in the first place? As the president launches investigations into this supposed killer squad, let him make sure that people who hold political responsibility in this, the guys at the very top, are held to accountable. As Prime Minister Raila Odinga would put it, don't let only the Omena to suffer, make sure you go all the way to Mbuta, so that Mbuta as well is held to account. And Mbuta here is a big fish. Thank you.
An interesting analogy that mine, Kidi has referred to you as the president's man on this panel.
Let me say this, that governments are supposed to inspire hope, not inspire fear. I think the last administration was inspiring fear, but with the presidential directives and instructions that we are getting from President William Ruto, is that his government is focused on inspiring hope. And that is what a good government should be. Let me say this, that the work of police should not be to kill or to execute people. The work of the police should be to protect property and lives. And I think the president is starting on a very high gear in regards to focusing on the right, or trying to show the police service the way they should be serving Kenyans. Because in the past, they were really not focused on serving Kenyans, but rather to execute the political orders that they have been given by the people above them. And I want to concur with my friend here that indeed, even as much as we focus on the people who are perpetrating these evil acts, we also need to look at the people who are who are issuing these orders, so that people can carry political responsibility. Even those people who are going to be given offices by this administration, they can get to know that they are going to be held accountable at the end of the day. High responsibility comes with high accountability. And I think that's what the president is trying to show in regards to how he is governing this country. And it is not going just to be about the police service, but rather all other state departments, so that every state officer can align his thoughts with the agenda of the president and what he promised during the campaign time. Let me say this, Olive, that the time this country is governed by the Constitution, we should not be governed by rule of men, but rather by the rule of law. So state officers, even individual citizens, they should always adhere to rule of law and not to what would call the wishes and the desires of an individual, so that we are able to take this country to the next level. Okay. Let me say this, that if we want to take this country forward, we need to think about respecting simple principles of respecting each other, simple principles of respecting lives, and simple principles of that I can agree or disagree with your opinions. But that doesn't mean that if I disagree with what you say, that I should come for your life. And that is what we were seeing in the past administration. Okay. I think I've seen the standard saying that the president is not talking about historical injustices. When I look at the issues of SSU, these are some of the historical injustices that we are talking about. It doesn't mean that historical injustices just mean what was happening in 1963s and 1970s. Historical injustices means what actually happened yesterday or what happened last week. And that is the kind of injustices I think this administration is trying to settle.
All right, and Kidi,
only
I'll come to you, but he's referenced the standard, so I just wanted to quick reference and just show what he's talking about. Front page of the Standard hits misses of Ruto's first big day. And the hits, they've listed agriculture, housing, access to credit, universal healthcare, digital superhighway, rule of law, and climate change. And Mrs. National Healing, they say little commitment to heal political rifts that have always undermined nation building and unity. Cost of living, besides relief food distribution, silent on measures to deal with cost of living in the immediate term. Historical injustices that Maina Karobia just referenced, nothing on the transitional justice agenda, such as land grabs and political assassinations. Gender inclusiveness, constitutional one-third gender rule, still a mirage on the periphery of national discussions. National debt, they say it was a miss from his speech. No word on spiraling debt and how to deal with it. Economy, wealth, no clear strategies to grow economy, create wealth for all. And job creation, apart from agriculture, to mention manufacturing, no mention of manufacturing agenda. So I see Ascon Kamili. Hi. Ascon Kamili has joined us. And now that he's here, I can start steering us towards the topic of conversation. Aikidi.
Yes.
I've not forgotten.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but speaking of the, I know you wanted to also comment on the hits and misses of the speech. But Ruto locks Hustler Fund loans to mandatory saving pension plan. Kenya Kwanza had promised unconditional access to the cash during the campaigns, but this report by Peter Mburu says that the Hustler Fund will be subject to a raft of conditions, including mandatory participation in a savings and pension plan with just one center. I think the Daily Nation has been delivered. Can I have a copy, please? Oh, here it is. Making sure I get exactly what they have written. And yes, with an enticer of free cash equivalent to half the amount saved. So we looked at that and the pledges made. And state and plan to plant 15 billion trees by 2032, part of the hits as the Standard puts it. And speaking of food and securing said food basket, just a note here that the Kusi Ideas Festival, which is powered by the Nation Media Group, will be exploring matters climate change, responses and solutions. I thought I should just throw this in there. Africa faces up to rising climate-related health emergencies. In Africa, frequent floods, water and vector-borne diseases are deepening health crises. Although the continent contributes the least to global warming, it bears the full consequences. A quote there by quote of Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, WHO Regional Director for Africa. But moving on, and we can now get into matters. Cabinet and vetting, even as I invite my panelists to speak on the pledges made quickly. But here's what we are discussing this morning. 5 more face questioning by MPs. Who are these 5? We have Mithika Linturi here. Linturi's eye on the prize despite litany of lawsuits. We have Rebecca Miano, who is also going to be vetted today. We have Ezekiel Machogu, who is, and I see here the Daily Nation says Machogu's tough test on new system of education. Play on a pun there, isn't it? And we have Eliud Owalo, who Kidi Mwaga referenced this morning as one of the heavy hitters in Luo Nyanza. Yes. Possible success.
Someone who stood with the president against the wave of the ODM and Azimio. I was deep inside Azimio, and we knew we were going to obliterate the likes of Owalo. So when they have prevailed, I think the best way the president can reward someone like Owalo is not to bring someone, not to make him play second fiddle. If anything, Owalo, in our view, should be the president's point man in Luo Nyanza.
Okay, he's the most credible. So not play second fiddle to who?
I mentioned that in reference to Miguna because Miguna is coming as if he's a savior. And I was tempted to ask, to save Luo Nyanza from what? Okay. And from who?
Ascon, I'd like you to respond to that as well. And here we have Babu Namwamba, who is up for the sports docket, sports and youth affairs. So they will be appearing in front of, appearing before the Committee on Appointments. And this is the schedule. Let me just see if I can zoom in, and we can see how this process has been carried out. One, Roslino Bala, my producer this morning, shared this one with me. But perhaps as I sort it out, Ascot, you can let us know your thoughts on Miguna's return, what it means for Luo Nyanza. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we had Musalia Mudavadi vetted on the 17th of October. That was on Monday this week. Justin Muturi up for the position of Attorney General, and Musalia Mudavadi, Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Aidan Duale up for Defense. Alfred Mutua up for Foreign Affairs. Alice Mudhoni Wahome up for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. And then the next day, that was on Tuesday, we had Kithure Kindiki up for Interior and National Administration. Professor Njogona Ndongo, who is up for National Treasury and Economic Planning. Aisha Jumwa up for Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action. We have Davis Chirchir, Energy and Petroleum. Moses Kuria up for Trade, Investment and Industry. And then before we went for Mashujaa Day, we heard from Murkomen. This was on Wednesday, and this is Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, Elgeyo Marakwet Senator. He's up for Roads, Transport and Public Works. We had from a person who Roslino Bala calls her namesake, and that is Roselinda Soipan Tuyo, and she's up for Environment and Forestry. We have Penina Malonza up for Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage. Melita Oletenge spoke to her yesterday during the Mashujaa Day celebrations. We have Zachary Mwangi Njeru up for Lands, and Susan Wafula up in the Health docket today. We have, as I mentioned, as we saw in the Daily Nation, Midhika Linturi, Eliud Owalo, Ezekiel Machogu, Ababu Namwamba, and Rebecca Miano. And then on Saturday, we have Simon Chelugui, who has served as CS Labor and now is up for Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development. Salim Mvuria, who is up for the Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs, as well as Mining. And then we have Florence, who is up for Labor and Social Protection. And finally, Masi Wanjao up for Secretary to the Cabinet. So these four will be vetted on Saturday. All right, Ascon, Kamili, Miguna.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure to come on set, albeit very late. But I must say that for Miguna, I think the whole country is happy. It is that one moment where everybody feels that at least the rights of an individual or a citizen have been respected. So on that basis, we have to congratulate the government, particularly President Ruto, for allowing Miguna back. It's a bit difficult to understand how somebody would be banished from their own country, their country of birth. So for me, I think it's quite something, and I really love to hear that Miguna is back home and is able to exercise his rights and do whatever he wishes within the borders of his country. But on to the political perspective, I don't think I'm very ready to heap praises on Miguna, because I'll be very surprised to see Miguna support William Ruto for the next 1 year. Is somebody who does not appreciate the fact that leadership is a cocktail of so much. You need emotional intelligence. You need to know when to stop, when to run. Miguna is somebody who would wake up one morning and with very unexpected outbursts, maybe lambasting the president for whatever reason. So I'm very cautious to heap praises and even accord him that chance to imagine that he would become something mega in our politics. I would just want to know that he would play a very critical role in the opposition maybe, or supporting the government for a moment, but not expecting so much. But if it proves me otherwise, then I'll be very happy as well.
All right.
Yes.
Hi, Sawa. I'd like to get into this vetting process for cabinet secretaries. Gentlemen, I'm curious what your first impressions are. Maina Karobia.
Let me just say that the fact that Miguna is here is the highlight of a president who wants to reach out to every other person who is outside there or who was a victim of political machinization of the former administration. And the president is actually showing that he has a big heart even to reach out to people who didn't support him, because Miguna didn't support him in 2013, 2017, and it's only for purposes of the challenges that he was having that he supported him in 2022. But back to your question, is that my impression of the cabinet that was named by His Excellency the President is that it is a hybrid cabinet of politicians, technocrats, and experienced hands. So I am looking at it from that angle. It is also a practical cabinet, because when you have a cabinet that has some political leaning or people who have the political experience, it means that they understand the challenges of the people in one way or the other. They know that the people are the center of any policy that is made in a country. Unlike in the last administration, where we had a cabinet that was by and large a technocrat-based cabinet, and people they didn't have any political experience. So, in terms of accountability, in terms of political accountability, it is actually something that they didn't really imagine in terms of execution of their mandate. But when you have people who have political experience, people who know that that you are in power today and tomorrow you can be outside that power, it means that when they will be making policies, they will be knowing that people are the supreme cog of our nation in terms of driving the nation forward. So I'm looking at it from the practicability of the cabinet and the experience and the qualifications of that cabinet. And I'm looking at it from the point of it's a hybrid cabinet, unlike in the past cabinet where it was more of a technocrat cabinet.
All right. Kidi, several pledges had been made. We've been talking a lot about promises and pledges this morning. 50% of cabinet was meant to go to women. So let me count, right?
Yes.
Let's count together. Meanwhile, Maina Karobia, there's kuna barua ilitumwa jana, I mean, that was published yesterday in the Taifa Leo. And how is your Kiswahili?
It's good.
It's good? Because I was afraid to ask Ascon and Kidi.
Oh my God.
I'd like you.
Do you want me to brag on national television?
How is your Kiswahili?
Do you want to
but Kidi Mwaga, yes, your Kiswahili must be excellent.
I am son of a teacher.
Yes. From the coast?
No, from Lonyans, but
yes.
son of a teacher.
But son of a teacher.
Yes.
Your Kiswahili is good.
Without a doubt.
All right. So, Matt, here, this is what I'd like you to read for us. It's a letter that was sent into the Taifa Leo. But first, let us count so that Kidi can answer my question.
Acha huyu asome hii barua.
This barua means,
pass it on to the son of
I was actually the best in Swahili in my high school. So
Really?
Well, that is the case of...
I'm perpetuating stereotypes.
The wizard who jumped from the high rock tree, praising himself.
So, shall we count? So here, if we are to incorporate the Prime Cabinet Secretary, should we incorporate him?
Yeah.
As well as the Attorney General?
Yeah.
Yes.
Should we, gentlemen?
Yeah.
As well as Secretary to the Cabinet?
Yeah.
Yes.
We incorporate all of them?
Part of the cabinet, yes.
All right. So in total, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, right? 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, is it? I feel like I've counted wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, we verified. 24, right?
Yes.
Women. Alice Wahome, are you marking? Somebody?
Yeah.
Give Maina the job of marking the number of women. Do you have a pen? Would you like a pen?
I have
Maina?
it. I have donated.
All right, so we have Alice Wahome. 1. Aisha Jumwa, 2. Soipan Tuya, 3. You okay? Penina Malonza, 4. Susan Wafula, 5. Rebecca Miano, 6. Honorable Florence Chepngetich Koske Bore, 7. Mercy Wanjao, 8. Have I missed anybody?
Did you count the two other middle?
Who are those?
Yeah, the third row. Yeah.
Soipan and
Yeah, okay.
Penina?
Yes,
I
you
did.
That's right.
I did.
So that means they're 8 out of 24.
That is not half, Maina Karupia. Unless my mathematics.
He's not mathematics.
Unless my mathematics is not mathematics.
Yes. You see, the cabinet complies with the constitutional mandate of the constitutional provisions to that gender rule. And I think one thing we need to agree, Olive, is that policies and agreements are progressive. There are so many promises that His Excellency William Samoei Ruto gave. There are so many commitments that he gave, including with us as the youth, under the Youth Charter. And we are patient. I like what my friend said about Miguna, that politics and leadership is all about patience and sometimes emotional intelligence, so that you're able to conform and you're able to adapt with the realities. We need to ask ourselves, what are the immediate needs of the ordinary Kenyan on the streets? The immediate needs of ordinary Kenyan is about putting money in the pocket, making sure that their livelihood are improved. And we have seen that in terms of, we have seen His Excellency the President trying to act in regards to these needs, even with the speech that he gave yesterday and the inaugural speech. So I'm looking at the cabinet from the point of, and that's why I talked about the practicability of the cabinet. We need to look at every policy, every decision that is made at the high level from the point of the immediate needs of the people. Once we sort out the immediate needs of the people, then we can look at the secondary needs of the secondary commitments that he has given. Because, Liz, we have seen, Liz.
No, I'm not
Olive,
trust.
Olive.
Yes.
You have seen the global crisis that is affecting this world. Actually send away a prime minister of a first world nation. That's why I was calling you Liz, because I was referencing to her.
the trouble in
the immediate
the UK.
Kingdom, yeah. The United Kingdom.
Even before
all right.
Before we look at the secondary needs of the society, we need to look at the primary needs of individual citizens and of the nation.
Okay.
The primary needs that is affecting our globe.
Point taken, Maina.
Has led a first nation lose a prime minister. So we don't want to have this presidency get lost by not sorting out the problems that are affecting Kenyans.
All right. So gentlemen, we need to take a break. We'll come back. We'll come back. A break. Ask on a break. So the mathematics class has ended at this point. When we come back, yes. Kidi would have revised his Kiswahili. We'll be ready to begin Kiswahili class. Sorry, we had to...
Yo, what's up, going Republicans? It's the trendsetter right here, and on this week's episode of Teen Republic, we switch it up a little bit. We are celebrating 1 year. Yeah, guys, that is the 1 year anniversary since I, Aziza, and DJ Rickmore took over the show. And on Bazenga, we featured the best of the best Bazengas throughout the 1 year.
Napala Studioni, we're gonna be kicking it with J-Rocks all the way from Zambia.
From the west to the east, feeling like Zulu.
Some amazing dances.
They love the way I raise the bar.
And music policy takuwa hotter with DJ Rickmore, the Afro King.
Run the track like a road run. For some time, but we're not done.
Oya, niaje wazee watu wangu wa power, DJ mwapa hivi kama kawaida, you know how we do it kwenye radio yako 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives. DJ Mo, DJ Kamuzi alongside MC Jawochi, the host with the most. I'll see you.
DJ Kamuzi, the musical chef.
She wants to be like.
Kutoka radio mtu wangu tunaingia kwenye TV na pale hivyo tunaletea ngoma zingine Ital 2 tunaletea mpaka guests all over the world kutoka Jamaica, Kenya, East Africa, name them. Ama ni aje Mo?
Yes sir, na kama kawaida sisi kama Jam Down tuingia kwenye area kwenye mtaa yako mazee, Jam Down on the road mazee, tuambie ukuje wapi?
Jawochi kila sato anakuletea reggae news, what's trending.
Yeah, this and much more from 7 p.m. Nation FM.
Alafu kuanzia 10 mpaka maidha mtu wangu #JamDownKE. Awola.
Do you know why they call me sugar? It's because I bring the flavor, the heat, the spice, and the vibes on Kenyan radio. When a song plays on my show, it moves from being a hot song to a hit to a classic. When I interview you, you become a household name. And for every brand that advertises on this show, they move from being a brand to the brand. If you want to be seen, felt, and heard, you know where to be. This is the place every Monday to Friday on 96.3 Nation FM. It's the Nation FM Drive with yours truly, Anto, Neo, Soul. So kiss, mwah! Every other frequency, goodbye, and keep it right here, 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives.
This week on The Trend, it's all about fun and good vibes with the president of Committee Africa, Mr. Eric Omondi. The only Rosa will be bringing her energy. Plus, he's one of the biggest musical talents on the continent. A celebrated production genius behind Sauti Soul's hit records, Savara will be in his house. I'll also be hanging out with the statue DJ. We've got DJ E on the decks, Osoro on the socials, hosted by me, Amina Abdi Rabah. You don't want to miss, only on NTV.
The Trend, in association with Techno Camo 19 series.
Welcome back to AM Live. You're getting the youth perspective, and Kiddy and Ascon are throwing looks my way because before we took the break, they were keen to respond to Maina Karobia's submissions on primary and secondary concerns when we asked him about why President William Ruto has not abided by his pledge that 50% of cabinet positions would go to women. Kiddy.
The first thing I want to say before I respond to that, my brother, while we were speaking on the question of the rule of law, intimated ventilated how we should run a government that is accountable, and he was speaking as a paragon of virtue. He could be, but I must remind him that in 2014 he belonged to the Jubilee coalition then. We must remind him that part of the problems we are seeing with the police not being accountable emanated from the Security Amendment Clause of 2014, and that we had to fight in Parliament, that someone had to go to court to have sections of that law invalidated. Should be a lesson that when you attempt to harm your friend using the instruments of the state, as James Orengo would put it, that ultimately that government will eat you, especially if you are supposedly its child or its children. On the question of compliance with the 50% as the president indicated, you see that we were told that we were going to have 50% in cabinet. That has not been met. The pragmatic side of it is that the president has to balance between honoring promises, the existing realities, the question of rewarding loyalty, and the question of competence. This cocktail of issues put together sometimes can tie the president's hand and make it difficult for him to honor his pledge of 50-50, even if he really wanted to do so. But then I find it slightly interesting when my brother suggests that it is because of the I don't know, COVID-19, or is it the war in Ukraine that has claimed the political life of Liz Truss. We had Theresa May in 10 Downing Street. Theresa May left, and I don't think it was because of the war in Ukraine or anything. I will agree, Sid, that of course some of this, the progress is always progressive. Progress is always progressive, I will repeat that. And that having up to a cabinet consisting of 50% women may take some time. If anything, because we are a patriarchal society, that naturally previously we have kept women at, second best positions. So that if you have a chairman, then you have a woman who is a deputy. We will take some time to get to a point when we will empower our women to believe that they can sit in cabinet as cabinet secretaries with the full portfolio and able to discharge government agenda with distinction. So I think, and this government is only 30 days in office, so I think you give it another, the rest of the 5 years, and we may at some point see the president, because one thing President William Ruto has demonstrated is that unlike most of his colleagues in the political space, he keeps his word.
Okay. Now, I'm looking, I have because Maina Karobia introduced the youth charter.
Yes.
The 50% was women's charter.
Yes.
All right. So youth charter, under leadership and governance, he pledged to, accord to young people increased visibility, access, participation in the decision-making process, and policy implementation, increased visibility, all right? Facilitate the effective participation and inclusion of youth in the national development planning process and preparation of policies that affect the youth.
Yes. 3,
make the youth ministry a stand-alone ministry headed by youth, underscore.
Yes.
Headed by youth, dedicated to the eco-social and socio-political development of youth in Kenya. Appoint 30% of youth in all appointive positions in government. County administrators to be given to the youth. Modernize, okay, so I will leave it at that because that is the focus, at least as far as cabinet is concerned. So 30% of youth in all appointive positions in government. Standalone youth ministry headed by youth.
Well,
fair? Chill.
For me, I think even during... Sorry.
Hold on, hold the horses. So...
Oh, you want to check through if we have
I'm looking for youth.
Maybe we could put a Babu Namwamba somewhere around.
So standalone ministry,
is almost turning 50.
Youth ministry was to be standalone, right? So this is youth affairs, sports, and the arts. Okay, I can concede that sports and the arts
almost
are youthful.
Right.
Is he youth?
But
Babu Namwamba was 37 in 2007 when he was elected. Not anywhere near youth, maybe youthful.
Okay, not anywhere near youth. But maybe my eyes are deceiving me here.
But I think...
where's the 30%?
The most important thing is, as we had said even during the campaigns, is that there is nothing very important in a manifesto or a charter or whatever document that a candidate signs with their supporters. The most important thing is implementing what is in that document. And you remember that I tried to establish a nexus between what is presented by the ODM party or the Azimio la Umoja and the Kenya Kwanza. And we got to an agreement that they were almost one and the same thing. What was proposed by Azimio for the youth is almost the same as what was proposed by Kenya Kwanza for the youth. But the most important thing for me was who was going to implement this and who was going to keep their word. So while mine are being conflicted, might not want to speak about it loudly and clearly, I think I'll speak for him today. I'll
you
attempt.
know what his brief?
I'll attempt to speak for him because I think the president has proven, which is something I've stated before, as Kidi has said, that is somebody who can keep his word. He has kept his word to Musalia Mudavadi. He has kept his word to Kingi. He has kept his word to Etangula and several other people. Why is he not keeping his word to the young people of this country? You know, when he promised that he's going to give them a standalone youth ministry, there are a good number of young Kenyans, I want to believe, who voted for him on that simple basis. When he promised that 30% of all the appointive positions in government are going to go to the young people, I suspect a good number of young people voted for him simply and basically for that reason. So when he runs away from this, I think he should be called out and, you know, told to be aware that the young people are still having their eyes on his appointments and expecting that he could reorganize his cabinet accordingly. Even as of now, we have not given up because the cabinet is not in place yet. They're still doing their vetting. We don't know whether the National Assembly is going to dismiss some of them. Should that happen, we are going to demand that actually the president should consider the women of this country as he had promised. While my colleagues would say that we have to look at the realities of our politics today and our governance system, we have had this conversation around the participation of women, and particularly young women, in the governance of our country and even in other areas. You know, when we want to keep half of our country behind, you know, it's like you're walking and you're cutting, or you're holding one of your arms. You know, you're not able to walk properly. So if we give a chance to the women of this country to participate just as their counterparts, the men, I think we're going to have more productivity. We have had women work very successfully in so many areas. Even the lady who was nominated there, Rebecca Miano, led the Kengen, which is a very powerful, you know, institution for a very long time, and actually has been recording serious growth in Kengen. So we have a lot of women who supported Kenya Kwanza who can be considered for the cabinet. And therefore, the president should be told that really it's very necessary for him to keep his word, particularly on the one aspect of women and on the other of the youth. And we also have this conversation around giving the youth a chance at the CAS level and maybe the PAS. I saw one of our friends, I think it's called Karondo, is been shortlisted for the PS position. We are not sure whether the president is going to consider him. But I have this beef with anybody who thinks the young people should not be given a chance at the most strategic areas. You know, we had this conversation earlier with Alex Matera, and he was using this analogy that when people go out to a birthday bash, and you know, the seniors and the big people sit at some point, have their good time and drinks, when the children are given a bouncing castle to go and enjoy themselves. This is exactly what we are doing to the young people of this country. We are, you know, sending them to the bouncing castle at the CAS, you know, at the chairs of parastatals, at the, you know, the board members. We don't want to give them a chance where it matters most, at the cabinet where decisions are made. We have had young people before given a chance, and they have proven. Actually, to that extent, I don't know the age of the lady called Soipantuya, but I was very impressed by her presentation, I think the other day when she was being vetted. Actually, she was an indication that when a young person is given a chance, a young person who's gone to school properly, who has their knowledge well gathered, they can actually do something tangible. So it is important that the president considers the young people of this country and considers them seriously.
All right. Yeah. Kidi, now I'd like to give you occasion to sit for your Kiswahili oral exams. If you could read that letter that was submitted to Taifa Leo and published yesterday.
I don't know if I should add this before I read this letter, that I will remind our friends in Kenya Kwanza that to campaign, in the words of Maria Cuomo, you have to do it in poetry, but governance is always done in prose. So let's take our Swahili lesson. I don't know if this is what you call madaku or maudhui, but it says Ruto ametuvunja moyo kutoteua mahasla serikalini. Kama mfuasi sugu wa Rais William Ruto, tangu mwaka 2018 alipotofautiana na bosi wake wakati huo, Uhuru Kenyatta, amenivunja moyo. Japo mimi na wengine tulimpigia kura kwa matumaini kwamba angebuni serikali itakayoshirikisha raia wa kawaida, ameteua wanasiasa marafiki zake. Hii imedhihirika kutokana na orodha ya watu aliowateua kushikilia nyadhifa za waziri kwenye serikali yake. Aidha, orodha ya watu 585 wanaohojiwa ili kuteuliwa kama makatibu wa wizara ni marafiki zake. Miongoni mwao ni wanasiasa walioshindwa katika kura ya Agosti 9. Rais Ruto amewapa kisogo raia wa kawaida, japo wenye kisomo ambao pia walichangia ushindi wake. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza haitakuwa yenye sura ya mahasla jinsi ambavyo kiongozi huyu alituahidi alipokuwa akisaka kura zetu. Badala yake itajumuisha viongozi mabilionea, ukizingatia zoezi la kuwapiga msasa linaloendelea bungeni. Aidha, serikali ya Rais Ruto haioni nyuso geni, bali ni watu wale wale ambao wamehudumu katika serikali zilizopita ama siasani awali. John Ole Seur, Narok. Asante.
All right, well done. Better than I would have read it.
Actually, I'm suspecting you didn't have gone past the second line.
Well, I indicate that I'm son of a teacher.
And actually,
that should mean something.
You've proven you went through your classes
as the president's man on the panel, what is your response?
Yes. Olive, if there is one person that Kenya should be patient with, is William Ruto as the president. Because as my friend rightfully said, he's a man of his word. He's somebody that you can count on in terms of delivering. So far, in terms of policy direction and in terms of presidential speeches that he has delivered, we have not seen him wave from what he was doing or what he was promising in the campaigns. He has stuck, even in terms of instructions, in terms of presidential directives, they're in line with what he promised during the campaign time. And I want to request Kenyans to be a little bit patient. This administration is just, I think, 39 days in office, 30 to 40 days in office, and quite much he has delivered in terms of appointing of the judges, in terms of realigning the independence of the police service, in terms of allocating them an independent budget for them. All these and other policy directives and instructions that he has given are in line with what he promised in the plan or the manifesto that he gave us during the campaign time. I would ask Kenyans to be patient with him. Government, really even the government that he is running on right now, he is still meeting the cabinet secretaries that were appointed by his predecessor. So this is a government that is, the engine is still more or less the engine of Uhuru Kenyatta. So as we go progressively, we are going to see these changes.
Are these not his appointments? These are not Uhuru Kenyatta's appointments?
But they are not in office. They are not executing any mandate.
They are as good as in office.
They are not in office.
They
can't sign any. They can't sign any document. They can't pass any policy as of now until they are sworn in. But let me say this.
But listen to what is his name again, Kidimwaga? This gentleman.
The narrow guy.
So Pantria?
No, the
guy is called John something.
Oh, John, sorry, he's called John Ole Seur from Narok.
John is asking this, right? That you campaigned on a bottom-up platform.
Yes.
You identified as hustlers. When these people have appeared, have presented themselves before the committee on appointments for vetting, we're talking hundreds of millions of shillings in net worth.
But you must ask.
Are they hustlers?
Let me say
basically, he is asking, where are the hustlers represented?
This is the point.
In this cabinet.
Yes. If you look at that cabinet, all those people have worked themselves up to the ladder. I saw the interview of Aisha Jomo. This is a lady who bore her firstborn, I think when she was in her 20s or in her early 20s. But that has not stopped her from rising from being a councillor in the during the former constitution's dispensation to becoming a cabinet secretary in this time and age. So really, if you look even at other cabinet secretaries, people like Moses Kuria, they are people who have come from humble background. Somebody like Alice Wahome. I listened and watched her give her story of how they used to carry water and jerrycans and walk barefooted during her childhood. And if there is a hustler, there cannot be other good hustler or good example like the guys who have been appointed to be cabinet secretaries. We need to appreciate hustler. Being a hustler is not just being having a net worth of 0 at this particular point. Being a hustler means you are inspired. You are inspiring a generation that your humble background cannot dictate your destiny. And that is what should be informing our discussion in regards to hustler being mainstreamed in terms of decision making.
I will say this.
Oh, Kidi, let us contribute.
I think I will agree with Maina to a specific extent. In fact, I only, besides the two issues of the youth and the women, I think William Ruto has done fairly well. You know, almost every other promise that he gave, he has actually delivered on them. Besides the two issues that stand as very prominent, that is on the youth issue and the women issue. Actually, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was revolving around why so many cases are being dropped in court. And I told them, I think that is the right thing to do. And why do I think this is the right thing to do? When William Ruto was campaigning, he was very clear that he did not believe these cases were built on merit. So he's doing exactly what he promised. And for me, that is how to evaluate a politician.
But it should not be his decision, because
while it is not his decision,
institutions are independent.
While it is
the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, is it not that office that is mandated?
That is what is on paper, but we know that the hand of the president is somewhere, and actually ensuring that these cases are dropped. You don't want to wake up one morning and the deputy president has had his 7.6 billion graft case dropped just for no other reason. But this was my reasoning politically. Ruto made promises, and he actually delivered on his promises. He said he does not believe these cases are built on merit. And we can see the cases crumbling one after the other. That is how to evaluate a politician. You evaluate a politician on their promises vis-a-vis how they execute on what they had promised.
Are you saying the ODPP is compromised?
Actually, I think the ODPP, the current the DPP, I think he does not deserve to be in that position. Because the way he's not very consistent with how he's approaching these issues tells me that he's either being manipulated from some quarters, or actually he doesn't know what he's doing. Because at the outset he said the Samburu governor's case was going to be dropped. When there was heat in the media and everybody was complaining again, he was saying the case is going to go full hog. So I'm not very convinced he knows what he's doing, or I'm not very convinced he's acting independently. But that is for other quarters to decide. For me, I think I agree with William Ruto and the approach he's given how to run this government, that actually you can promise and deliver on your promises, good or bad. Because, a politician is elected based on their promises. He promised that he doesn't believe that the cases are on merit. He said all these corruption cases were leveled against these people by a regime that did not want them to prosper, and is actually delivering on his promises. So we need to give Ruto an 100%, besides the question on the youth and the question on women. But also, having said that, I also want to agree with Maina that, and it still goes back to what William Ruto talked about during his campaigns. He explained who a hustler in his view is. He said that a hustler does not mean you are at a net worth of 0, as Maina puts it. He said a hustler is anybody who is inspired to become rich through whatever means. You get the point? And actually, all these people have a story of how they became rich, whether through stealing, whatever the means. And that is exactly what he has done. So we have to give it to William Ruto, that he could speak something, good or bad, and keep to it.
So no chance of Mama Mboga or Boda Boda riders?
But if you listen to the story of some of them, they claim to have been Mama Mbogas before. And for them, they think that having been a Mama Mboga, that's an inspiration enough that actually there's a Mama Mboga today who would be a CS in the next 10 years.
Kidi?
I am unable to recognize my brother, especially the brother I was with in the campaign trail. But I will say this, that there is nothing more dangerous in a constitutional democracy than a criminal justice system that is either not independent or that responds to political stimuli. My brother I think he has a degree in law, and therefore as a lawyer he should know that when you construe a document, especially a statutory document, be it a constitution or a statute, you look at what the drafters of that document were seeking to cure. There is a reason why we established Chapter 15 commissions. And there is a reason why we removed prosecutorial powers from the office of the AG, who was an appointee of the president, and made it an independent office. So that I expected my brother to call that out. I am surprised that he's, you know, painting it in very colorful words. And I will say this. We want to see a DPP that is independent. We remember in 2020 or 2021, we had the prosecutorial guidelines that were issued by the same DPP on when a charge meets the threshold of being taken to court. The way these cases have been are being dropped, we must go back and interrogate that why did you have to drag people to court? And you know how our society functions. The moment you're taken to court, people don't even greet you in the streets. So why did you have to drag people to court and say that they had charges and then cause their families so much anguish? When you are a civil servant, for instance, the moment you are mentioned as you're dragged to court, you stop going to office. You are on half pay. When you're on half pay in an economy that is disrupted as this one, it means that there is serious anguish and turmoil visited not only on you, but also on your loved ones. Some of those people, you look at them, they have got young children. If it is true that those gentlemen didn't have a case to answer from the word go, and it is not a determination made by the court, but by the person who dragged them to court in the fashion and name of ODPP, then let the holders of office, as I said, let Mbuta face the music. And Mbuta here, as I will repeat, is the big fish. Let the person who preferred the charges against these individuals be made to account, so that in the future, we do not have an ODPP boss and a criminal justice infrastructure that then is used to settle political scores.
But
sorry. Listen, okay. So as the matters are being dropped, I am a bit conflicted. I do not know if the ODPP is responding to political stimuli, or if in the first place, the ODPP agreed to be used to manipulate the political psyche of our nation. Thank you.
And I think it goes to the foundation of that matter. The foundation is the president believes that the investigating authority was compromised at the very outset. He believes the DCI was compromised. And we have seen the steps he has taken, right? He has talked about a specific unit within the DCI that was being used to frame, and actually has said that a good number of people, Kenyans, lost their lives in the hands of these people. And they have actually gone to the extent of investigating specific officers within the DCI. Now, the president is telling us that actually he believed that the cases that were in court were investigated in a skewed manner to advance a specific political direction. So if actually he believed that as he was putting it then, and for me he executes as he had promised, I think I agree with him.
All right, gentlemen, we need to wind down this conversation. Your last word as regards the topic of the day, the Ruto cabinet.
In fact, sorry, before you proceed, the case of Gachagua has been dropped, or is being dropped because of an investigating officer who has gone ahead and stated that he was being coerced to advance that case in that manner. In my view, this officer should face the music. He should face the law, yes, to explain to us really that when you're given a position of authority, and the law requires you to act within the limits of the law. You don't want to go advancing the interests of the president or whoever has assigned you that responsibility. You have to act within the law. And therefore, in that specific case, and there are several others, where the investigating officers claim that they were coerced to direct the cases in a specific direction, they should face the full force of the law.
All right, gentlemen, last word on the Ruto cabinet. Minor.
My last word is that the cabinet that was named is a cabinet that is inspired with hope and is well guided in regards to implementing and delivering the plan that Kenyans ratified on 9th of August. The fact that His Excellency William Samoei Ruto and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua were elected on August 9th, they were not elected on personality based, but they were rather elected on the campaign platform that they worked or projected to Kenyans on, and that is the plan. This cabinet that has been appointed and is the vetting processes continuing is a cabinet that is practical and a hybrid of people who can deliver, people who understand the challenges and the issues that are affecting our Kenyan Republic. So I want to ask Kenyans to be patient with this administration in regards to how this administration is being driven so far. So far, so good. As my brother Ascon has said, that the president has well tried to keep his word. We can only trust that he is going to keep his word in regards to the plan that he projected and in regards to the plan that was voted on August 9th. Let me say this. Allow me just 1 minute.
Because I want to also give
Yes.
and Ascon an opportunity
Yes,
to
let me just say this.
have a last word.
Let me just say this, that from the various speeches that the president has made, I have been able to observe 5 key issues that he is seeking to address. That is Kenya becoming a food sovereign nation, modernizing Kenyan economy to be an industrial nation, and also making sure that Kenya financial system is as independent as possible. Okay. The fourth one is that he wants to rebase our foreign policy to become a commercial foreign policy sort of a country. The other thing is that he is concerned about the welfare of Kenyans, and that's why he is proposing, Kenyans from all walks of life that we try to associate ourselves with social solidarity cooperatives so that we raise our investment and savings from those particular cooperatives.
Okay, Kitty?
I want to tell a story of a young man called Ben Rhodes, who joins Obama campaign in 2006 as a 26-year-old, a master's student. By the time Obama is leaving office, Ben Rhodes was the deputy director of NSAC, National Security Advisory Council, the NSA, which is the chairman of the NSA is technically the president's security advisor. The role that Colin Powell played before he became chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Ben Rhodes left Obama, as Obama was leaving office, Ben Rhodes was the deputy to the president's advisor on security matters, and he was in charge of the foreign policy. I know the youth constituency may want to put the president under so much pressure. Truth is, there will be learning that has to take place. And I know, for instance, what is the name of the ED of UDA? Odanga. I have run into Odanga, a brilliant young man whom I believe, given an opportunity, would do fantastic work in whichever capacity. So I think the president is going to make sure that the young people are infused together with the experienced hands to make sure that when they eventually given responsibility, then they are not set up to fail. The other thing is, as we are demanding, is that the young people could be made, say, cabinet secretaries in the here and now, with absolutely no experience at all, except their education, and then, in my view, would be possibly be setting them up to fail. I think that the president is cautious and patient to make sure that they are increasingly and progressively exposed to how these things are done, and then they will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. But when all is said and done, I wish them, the president's men, the very best.
All right, Ascon, your last word.
Well, mine would be very brief, and that's in the aspect of giving a pat on the back to the president, actually, for keeping his word up to that level, and also to encourage the government that as everybody else thinks that the young people might not merit for any serious positions now, I actually believe we have a good number of young people who can make it to the right positions. The PS, former PS, Irungu Nyakera, was PS at 28. Actually, he performed exemplarily well. I believe that there are a good number of young people, even within the UDA and Kenya Kwanza setup, who would get a chance and perform brilliantly should they be given a chance even at the cabinet secretary position. When we want to excuse our sister Aisha Juma for whatever reasons, we can equally excuse young people so that they could learn on the job. Because you don't want to wait until somebody gathers 10 years of experience before then you can give them a chance to take a key position of power. I want to see my brother Maina Karobia in the cabinet. I want to see Karaoke. I want to see so many of them that I think really merit for these positions to get there and to show the country that really young people can do it. As Kidi has said, a good number of examples are there for young people who have taken positions of power and have delivered. Secondly, I have had messages from my colleagues and friends who are asking the question whether I'm still fully aligned to the ODM party. I think I need to make it very clear. For now, I am not very convinced the ODM party, as was properly conceived and was properly designed, is advancing the ideologies that we believe in. For now, I think that this country needs to emphasize on economic empowerment, to emphasize on, bringing the youth from the base of the economic stratum up there. And I think the ODM party has not played up to that level. And it's a challenge to them that really going forward, they have to rethink their approach towards politics. And if that does not happen, I see, with the benefit of foresight, a good number of young people bolt out of the ODM party.
All right, thank you very much. Ascon has clarified his position because Kiliwaga said, I hardly recognize Ascon. All right, then we have Tumaina Karobia, UDA youth leader, Kidi Mwaga Kanu Youth Congress. And we have Ascon Kamili, who is a youth policy analyst, advisor, consultant. Yeah,
an engineer, a lawyer.
Formerly ODM.
Has he bolted out already? Have you started the band of Mera?
Ascon is
Ascon need some persuasion.
No, Ascon is a patriot. And he is always
patriot. Ascon Kamili patriot.
He's a patriot.
Let's end it there. Let's end it there, gentlemen.
What is
Ascon,
right?
Okay, all
What
right.
is right?
Let's leave it there. All right, so that's it for. Let's wind up AM Live at that point. My name is Olive Burrows. I've been your host. Time for me to take off my coat because the weekend has begun. And guess what is coming up next? Radio and TV come together. And we have Monique and David as well as DJ E in the Nation FM studios. And since DJ E ujumbe ifike kwako, niko na requests. I'm just opening up my Shazam really quickly so that I can make way for you. So I have a song request and it's Yawa No Day End by Majid. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.